Hi, my spooky friends. It's me, Erica, with the Crocheted Caution Tape. For those of you who are new to the channel, hi, welcome. Here we discuss true crime, dark history, mysteries, and all things spooky. To those who are returning, welcome back. I hope you enjoy. Before we get started today, I am sorry for not posting the last scheduled day. I did have surgery. Everything is fine. I'm recovering fine. Still limited, but I'm back. I have been busy while recovering. I have made chickens. Where's my camera? So I have also been working on making some headbands, some bandanas. They are not finished yet. I am hoping to build up a little stock and then open up a store, probably on Etsy. This is my last picture. Whenever I posted that I wasn't going to be able to upload, you all met Meowser. Meowser has been my comfort pillow. He's a little red dragon. So cute. Let's see. Sorry. Today we are going to work on sewing up our squares for our caution tape. Of course, I gotta get it all separated and in order. So while I start doing that, we can get started on today's story. Today, we are going to discuss Nellie Bly. It's kind of got some dark history to it. It's not really true crime. It's creepy. Not too creepy. Well, how to describe this? She's amazing. She was amazing. Give her that. She was a badass woman of history for sure. So, without further delay, I'm gonna start setting these up in order for them to be sewn together, and we'll get started talking about Nellie Bly. Alright. Nellie Bly was born Elizabeth Jane Cochran in Cochran's Mill, Pennsylvania. Alright. Her father was Michael Cochran, and he owned a mill successfully, and he was also the associate justice for Armstrong County. So her father was pretty successful, and uh, yeah, her father ran a successful mill. The town was, I didn't see anything about this for sure, but considering their last name, that her father owned the mill in the town, that the town that they lived in, Cochran's Mill, was named after her father, her family. When Nellie was 6, first, you guys, I've never blocked anything before, which is where you lay out crocheted pieces and stretch them out to how they're supposed to be stretched. Each square is supposed to be the same size. So if you do this and you spray it with water, it's supposed to make them all the same size and make them not so wonky. Okay. So when Nellie was 6 years old, her father passed away. and it was very unexpected, and he did not have a will. I forgot to tell you. Nellie was born on May 5th, 1864. I don't think I said that. So, her dad passed away unexpectedly without a will, and her her mother was not able to take over the business. She wasn't able to maintain raising the kids, cooking, the house, the land that they lived on, and the mill. She wasn't able to do this. Um, so she moved the family to Pittsburgh. It's where Nellie's older brothers lived. So, sorry, trying to figure out which order these letters go in. Okay, so her mother did remarry, but she divorced because there was abuse in the marriage. Good for her. When Nellie was 15, she she enrolled in the state normal school in Indiana, Pennsylvania. Um, Now we have briefly talked about the normal school in another story. I believe that one was covering Thelma Todd. A normal school was where um, people would go to study how to become a teacher. While enrolled at the state normal school, that is where Nellie added an E to the end of her name. So it was the same Nellie Cochran or Elizabeth Cochran, just with an E at the end of it. All right. However, Elizabeth was last one. We got them all in order. All right. We'll just stitch it right here. All right. So she did I lose? There it is. Gotta find my needle. Okay. All right. Nellie was only able to um, stay enrolled at the normal school for one term due to her family having some financial instability and some issues. And so that's when the whole family moved to Pittsburgh. Um, she she had dropped out of the normal school, but she tried to get a job at anywhere. She tried to find a job so she can help support her family, but in late 1800s, being a woman and all, she had a lot of difficulty in finding a job. Even though she had much more education than her brothers did, we're gonna get this figured out, right? Even though she had much more education than her brothers did, and they had no trouble finding a job, of course. Um, she tried and tried and tried, and one The Pittsburgh Dispatch. The Pittsburgh Dispatch published an article that criticized the presence of women in the workforce. Nellie, who was having this issue, stormed into the um, editor's office, who was George Madden. All right. So she was not happy, so she stormed into the office of George Madden and she called for equality in the workforce. Especially, she wanted more opportunities for women, especially for those women who were um, responsible for the financial well-being of the family. It makes sense. But this is the 1800s. I gotta keep that in mind. Okay. All right. So the editor was very impressed. She had written a letter that she took with her. The editor was incredibly impressed with how eloquently that she was writing. And so he gave her a job. He gave her a column that she was able to write for. And she wanted to be a reporter, but she was only able to report on certain things. She was only able to report on women's issues. She couldn't write about what was going on in the world, what was going on with the men in the world, anything. Just if it had to do with women. And this did not satisfy Miss Nellie. Although this is where Elizabeth Cochrane had changed her name. She started writing under the pen name Nellie Bly, which is what she is known as. She's known as Nellie Bly. She chose this name because it was, there was a popular song out at the time of the same name. She really liked it, so she went with it. Good for her. Alright. Even though her article was, her column was a very popular column, with only being able to report on women's issues, she wanted more. She wanted to be known for so much more than that. And so she ended up leaving that paper. And she went to New York. She thought that she would have better success in New York and she would be able to find a job much easier in New York. Unfortunately, that was not the case. She had a lot of trouble finding any paper that would allow her to write for them. She wanted to be able to discuss any issue that she wanted and be free to report on what she wanted to report on. Being a woman in the 1800s made that very difficult, but she did not give up. No, not Miss Nellie. She was a fighter. Sorry, trying to get this in. All right. So she was a fighter, and she continued to look for uh, jobs that she could report whatever she wanted on. And in 1987, that is when Miss Nellie, my hair is getting in the way. Sorry, it's not pulled back. that is when Miss Nellie New York, stormed into the office of the New York World's chief editor, Joseph Pulitzer. And she had some big ideas that she wanted to cover, that she wanted to discuss. She wanted to um, talk about the situation with immigrant families and how they were being treated and whatnot. Well, Mr. Pulitzer had denied her this. However, he was impressed with her ambition and challenged her, instead of writing this article that she wanted to write, to uncover what is going on in New York's most notorious mental asylum, Blackwell's Island. This did not scare Nellie in the slightest. She was like, hell yeah, let's go. I got this. Let me prove to you what I can do. And she did just that. She had decided that in order to do this, she needed to go undercover. That's right. 1887. First person to decide to go undercover to investigate something. Her decision to do this and her actions to follow through with this is what led to the discovery of investigative journalism. Very good, Nellie. Good for you. Be the rock star you are. So she wanted to go into undercover with the at the asylum, and she had done her research on it, and Blackwell's Island was home to many institutions, not just the asylum. Along with the asylum, they had a penitentiary, they had a hospital for the infectious diseases. It was had a poorhouse along with the mental asylum. Now Nellie, doing her due diligence, she set out to make herself appear insane. How does she? Sorry. How did she do this? Well, she went to a boarding house and, signed into it, applied to live there under an assumed name, probably under Nellie Bly, because not many people knew who she was, especially in New York. So she, as soon as she got set up there, she started making herself appear insane. Right? She would mindlessly walk around the corridors, the hallways, the streets, just muttering nonsense stuff. Um, she would, she ranted and yelled incoherently. Nobody could understand what she was saying. She practiced looking crazed in the mirror. She was dedicated. Within a few days of moving into this border house, the owners of the boarding house had, sorry, can't get that needle in there, decided to call the police because they were like, this lady be crazy. So the police came and collected her and then sent her to Bellevue Hospital, where she was examined, and they wanted to find out if like she was crazy, what we need to do with her. She's sick. What's going on here? Uh, well, after her stay at Bellevue Hospital, she lived under there was horrible conditions there, horrible molded food there. But they finally decided like, yeah, she's crazy. We need to send her to the asylum on Blackwell Island, which is what she wanted to do. So she was um, registered into the Blackwell Asylum, and that's where she gets started. She lives under the same conditions because, like I said, nobody knew who she was. She was had been diagnosed as being insane and all that stuff. Okay, when she got to Blackwell Island, we had Blackwell Island was initially constructed to have only 1,000 patients. At the time that Nellie was admitted, there were 1,600 patients, well above the 1,000. And due to budget cutbacks and whatnot, they only had 16 doctors. 16 doctors for 1,600 patients. That's craziness. Craziness. How were they expected to do anything? But that does not excuse what was going on there. I am all kinds of a mess right now. What is this? Okay. So, 16 doctors for 1,600 patients. Back then, for some reason, people would like to go visit asylums. I don't know why. Like, the thrill seekers, even like Charles Dickens, would go to asylums um to see the crazy people, I guess. Like, they saw them more as curiosities than actual people. I am all tangled up, y'all. I don't know what's going on here. Okay. Um, so she saw people coming in like that, and how people could visit such a place in the conditions that these people were living in and not say anything is insanity to me. Like, yo, just because they're in an insane asylum does not mean that they're not. So, um, the doctors and staff had very little training. Like, they weren't sufficiently trained. They were not trained to take care of the people that they had admitted there. They weren't trained at all. It was really, really bad. Uh, they ordered harsh and brutal treatment of the patients there that did nothing, very little, if anything, to actually help heal these people that were living in these conditions. They did more harm than anything. it's crazy. So Nellie, once she got admitted, she made friends very quickly. Sorry, I move things around a lot whenever I'm sewing them up because I gotta be at the right angle, you know? Okay. Um, so she made friends very quickly and she had found out like what these patients had lived through during their stay at Bellevue. No, not Bellevue, sorry, Blackwell Island. Um, they revealed the psychological and physical abuses that they had to live through, such as um, being forced to take a ice cold bath with their clothes on, and then they were to remain in there for hours, maybe. And once they were able to be let out of the ice baths, um, they had to remain in their wet clothes. Like ice cold bath, then having to stay in ice cold wet clothes. Obviously, this led to a lot of illnesses going around. Um, some were made to sit still on a bench for up to 12 hours at a time. They weren't able to move, eat, talk, nothing for 12 hours. That's that's an can't imagine. Some some of these people, these human beings, were tethered together with a rope and were forced to move parts around as though they were mules. Um, their food and sanitary situation was, of course, awful. Did you expect anything else after the little bit we have learned already? The food was stale, moldy, bugs infested. It's just, the meat was rotten. Their water was contaminated. They didn't have clean water. It was awful. Can't imagine. The If anyone resisted anything that they were told to do, eat, drink, whatever, if they resisted at all, they were severely beaten. And since the staff and doctors were not sufficiently trained, there was no, it wasn't like where you have a background check today. They check into your history and whatnot. I'm assuming they didn't do that back then, but the patients were constantly being threatened of violence and SA constantly by the people who work there. How is that supposed to? Mm, okay. During her stay here, Nellie had discovered that many of the inmates at Blackwell Island were not actually insane. They weren't insane at all. They were immigrants that couldn't speak the language. They had difficulty communicating, and due to that, they had a history with the law not able to effectively communicate with them. They were like, "Oh, they're bad people. They're criminals. Yeah, let's they needed to be taken away. So they got pushed into Blackwell Island. Many of these people had like fallen through the cracks of their society and the safety nets that are somewhat in place now, more so than they were back then, for sure. But these people were not able to communicate. They didn't have family to help them out. They didn't have family to support them, and they couldn't speak the language. So they were like, "Hey, let's go." But with what we have just talked about them doing at Island, even if they were admitted to the um, asylum and they weren't insane at that time, um, yeah, they became insane. I mean, all of the psychological abuse that they went through definitely would have some damage on a completely sane person. Nellie stayed at the asylum for 10 days. And that is when her editor, Mr. Pulitzer, had arranged for her to be released. And boy, she went to work quickly, like within days of being released. She had published her first of 6 articles describing the conditions at Blackwell. Her articles did become like a six-part saga of her treatment, and it was called 10 Days in the Madhouse. Um, with her article being released, that obviously did cause commotion in the public health department. No, sorry. A month after her her release, a grand jury in New York had decided that the hospital needed to be um, investigated. Way to go, Nellie. Now, the doctors and the staff were somehow tipped off that this investigation was going to occur, so they were tipped off early enough. Why am I having so much difficulty with this? They were tipped off early enough so that they could actually get to work trying to clean up everything. They brought in fresh food, clean water, and like scrubbed the place clean. The inmates that Nellie had talked to were either released or transferred to another asylum far away. They did everything they could to hide what was uncovered in these articles. However, try as they might, they did not succeed. They may have cleaned up their act a bit and gotten everything like cleaned up and everything that they thought was incriminating removed. The grand jury believed Nellie. So, doctors were fired, staff was fired, um, there was a bill that was passed that increased the budget for such asylums by $1 million in 1887. That would be $24 million today. Sorry, she's great. Um, yeah, so there were translators that were brought in to help with the inmates that did not speak English. There were changes made within the system to prevent people who did not actually suffer from a mental illness from being committed to an asylum. This is what led to investigative journaling. She went in, she's talked to the inmates, she acted like she was insane to get in, and she went deep and she discovered a lot. After this, Nellie did continue. Maybe if I do that. There we go. Okay. Uh, Obviously, after everything that she went through and success of her articles and her expose, she continued to work at the New York World paper. She continued to do exposés on the elite society in New York, the corruption in the state legislature, uh, the black market for buying infants. Yes, it was a thing, and I should definitely cover that story because that's crazy too. Uh, all this, she became a great success. Now, in 1889, 2 years after her articles were released from her investigation, Nellie read a book by Jules Verne, Around the World in 80 Days. And she was like, I can do that. I can do that faster. So what she do? She decided to travel around the world. The New York World published updates daily about her travels around the world, and I think stupid. Uh, the entire country followed her story because it was like, yeah, there was a book about it, but now we're living it like day by day. We're being told what she's going through, what her experiences are, and she made history, of course. Yet again, she did beat Jules Verne's timing, and she made it around the world in 72 days. Just awesome. Um, she held the record for only a few months, though, until a businessman of the name of um, George Francis Train, he completed the journey in 67 days. But still, a woman made it around the world in 1889 in 72 days. It was great. And after her return, she did continue her writing and published very influential articles, interviews with prominent people, and um, like such as the anarchist activist and writer Emma Goldman, and the social socialist politician and labor organizer Eugene V. Debs. Uh, all of her articles were major stories of the time, and there there was like she covered the march of Jacob Coxley's army on Washington D.C., the Pullman strike in Chicago. Both of these were protests in 1894 for workers' rights. Amazing. She wasn't scared. She wasn't scared to post the truth. She didn't let corruption get to her. She did her thing. She exposed the truth on some very um, influential topics that many were trying to hide, but it didn't stop her because she was awesome. Uh, at, at the age of 30, Nellie married a millionaire by the name of Robert Seaman, and he had several companies that he owned, and of course he was a millionaire at the time, so you know. After the wedding, Nellie did retire from journalism for a bit until, let's see, in 1903, her husband Robert had passed away, and she was left with the manufacturing company, the American Steel and Barrel Company, the ironclad manufacturing company, oil companies. Like she owned everything that Robert had worked on. And she was very big into workers' rights. So she was determined to treat her employees in the best possible way. She she made several patents for oil manufacturing, and many of these are still in use today. So she was very intelligent. She was a badass. She prioritized her workers and their health and their happiness and all of that. She provided health care benefits and recreational facilities. However, her employees were not as um, her employees were not as faithful to her as she was to them. As in, they they committed fraud against her. And since she was great at writing, she was great at creating things. She wasn't that great with money management. So, uh, her employees committed enough fraud without her catching on to it fast enough to where she had to file bankruptcy on her husband's company. It's very sad. She did everything she could for them, but they were like, no, you're a woman. I'm going to steal from you. Mm, stupid. Hate it. Hate it. Odie started barking. No, we had to take Odie to the vet yesterday. He's fine. He's fine. He's on some medicine to help him get better. So, after filing bankruptcy, Nellie decided to return to journalism, and she became a correspondent for World War I in Europe. Yeah, yeah. She went to Europe. She was able to shed light on major issues that impacted women during the World War. Bleh. Words are difficult. Don't be afraid of it. They're difficult. Ah, but she shed so much light on what was going on overseas during World War One. She was amazing. She continued to write. Why? Here. She continued to write until her death in 1922. January 27th, 1922, she passed away from pneumonia. Man, she live a life. She was amazing. She was great. There are a lot of things out there. Like there are movies that are um inspired by her trip to the asylum. There are books. I'm pretty sure uh, American Horror Story Asylum. Is that season 2? Season 2. Uh, was where was inspired by Nellie Bly, and it's just she was an amazing woman. She was very much a badass of history, and her trip through the asylum made history. She was amazing. Can't say that enough. I am going to continue to sew this all up together, and if I am finished with it by the next video, I will have it hanging up. There. I'll move the camera around to where you will be able to see it, and it'll be gorgeous. Otherwise, I will be continuing to sew this together in the next video. I hope you enjoyed listening about the amazing story of Nellie Bly. The reason why there's investigative journalism today. Like I said, I do want to cover the story of the black market for infants because that is a crazy story. If you have any other suggestions, any tips, any ideas, please list them below. Comment. Your advice is always welcome. I do love to read y'all's comments. And let's see. I'll show you what we've got done so far. Alright. Let's see. It's gonna be great. Okay. Um, that is all I have today. And I will be seeing you guys later, my spookies. Be good to yourself, be good to others, and I will be seeing you guys later.